You can ask me the questions.
Okay, first of all, what were your first responsibilities as a child?
I had a sister 9 years younger, and on occasions my mother would have me take care of her.
And what did your father do for a living?
My father was a dentist.
And what did your mother do for a living?
She was a housewife.
And did you go to school?
I went to Brockway Snyder for 12 years. Then I went to Southside Hospital for student nursing from the year 1943 to 1946. I graduated in 46, and then I worked at Southside for 1 year after graduating.
And then what kind of church did you go to?
I was a member of the Brockway Presbyterian Church.
And is there any events that took place, like floods or fires or depression?
We had the big flood in Brockway of 1936 when water from Little Toby went as far as the Warren house on Main Street. All the homes from Toby on up to their basements were flooded, and some people closer to the river were evacuated by rowboats.
And
there was the Depression, and I can remember that the farmers would pay my father by produce and chickens.
And what did you do for entertainment?
Went to the Brockway Theater. Matinees were 10 cents to get in. For students in high school at night, 21 cents.
And what kind of movies did they show? Like silent movies or?
No. I'm not quite old enough for silent movies. They had regular audio.
And then when you were older, what were your household responsibilities and duties?
Well, I worked in the yard. I helped my mother with the ironing, and I would help dust. I wasn't burdened a lot with household chores, though.
And what were like new inventions, like TV or anything like that?
When I was in 8th grade, we got a weekly paper called the Weekly Reader. And at that time, they were telling about a picture radio, and that was the TV. People in Brockway didn't have any powered lawnmowers.
Did you get a TV?
No, we didn't have it. I didn't have a TV until 1949, after we were married.
Anything else about before you got married? Is there anything else that happened?
Oh, let me think. Yeah, there was things. Let me think. I can't think right now. I'll probably think.
I'll check when you leave. Are you doing this on her?
On you, like whenever you guys got married. So.
No, I wanted to find out where she got. Oh, boy.
We're not going into that.
Where did you is there any place else you went for entertainment?
Yes, we had they called it the Keystone Swimming Pool.
In Brockway?
It was, no, going up at Keystone, right a catty corner from where you go to Tammons, the road back there, past Dick Wilcox place. Yeah, we went swimming there. Then I went swimming in the pond across from Plant 1. We went to football games, basketball games. We called our youth group Christian Endeavor. There was a big train wreck in about 1938 on the crossroads where the Lane homestead is, and they were carrying sheep, and 2 carloads wrecked, and a number of the sheep were killed, and then they had to round the other sheep up, and some of the farmers took them out to board them.
And what did you do on a date? Like, where would you go for a date at?
We walked up to the theater. Quite often we would after a school dance, they would come to my house and we'd sit in the kitchen, a number of us, and my mother would have baked a cake or pie.
And how many kids were in your schoolroom?
When I graduated, I think there was about 74.
Where did you meet Grandpa?
In the emergency room on April Fool's Day in 1946. He was a junior intern
At Southside
Hospital.
And then explain, like, from there to your wedding. Things you did.
I continued to work at Southside after I graduated for a few months. Then I came home and worked at Du Bois Hospital. And then we were married May 31st, 1947.
What did you do at Southside?
I was a student nurse. After I graduated, I worked on the ward floor for 3 months.
Okay. And what was your house like? Like the house you lived in?
When I was a youngster,
Mm-hmm.
it's the house where
That house not there?
not Yancy, but I guess Brenda, I can't remember the name. Tommy Shagnock lives in the house now. It's on Main Street. It was a 2-story typical house of that time.
Did you have your own room?
What?
Did you have your own room?
Yeah, I had my own room. There was only my sister and I. She had her room and I had my room.
See, and then after you got married, where did you live?
Your granddad did his internship at Washington Hospital, at Washington, PA, and I worked in the pediatrics department.
What happened with Grandpa getting drafted into the war?
Oh, he was in World War II before he went to medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was only in, or he was in all the time he was in medical school. And then he came to Brockway, started to practice in 1950, and in 51 he enlisted in the Air Force for the Korean War. He was going to flight surgeon school in Biloxi, Mississippi, and then on to San Antonio, Texas.
Was there any new inventions then? The refrigerator?
Oh no, they had the refrigerators. When I was in training. You might want to go back to that. Penicillin was the first that was used on patients. Sulfa had just come out, or in 42, I believe.
Was there a bowling alley?
Yes, there was a bowling alley. It's where the parking lot is now, next to Keith's establishment.
And then didn't you work at the office sometimes?
I relieved Liz Riggle when she went on vacation, yes.
And then how did Grandpa buy the office? Like, when did he get that?
He bought the office, let me see, in Bitsy, was 1963. Wait till I check.
Now, did you buy the office in 1963? Was there anything new that came out in banking or anything? That around when you were first married?
1965. Granddad said that the year we were married, they were starting to use radar where the police were. Okay.
Okay. How about... And then you had Bitsy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did Bitsy have to do?
What?
What did Bitsy have to do? Like,
in the evening, after we put her brothers to bed, she'd help me pick up the toys. And she would help watch them some. Not a lot, though.
and did you ever go out to eat in like a restaurant?
Yeah. Rocky Girl.
Was there any other restaurants here?
At one time there was the City Western, and that was up where next to Paisanas, between Paisana and JJ's Western.
And then who were your neighbors? Like, what did you do anything with your neighbors?
After we moved up on the hill, built our home up on the hill, Doris Nava and I used to put her children and my children in the car and take them up to my father's camp to go swimming in a pond. We went to Long Island Beach for 9 years every summer. We'd go ice skating in the winter. Water skiing, we had a boat. And I learned to water ski in the St. Lawrence River.
And do you have any stories about your kids when they were growing up?
Yeah, but I don't think I want to tell them now.
Any nice ones?
What?
Any nice ones?
Yeah, they were all nice. When my mother and I took them to the Halloween parade, Jeff was a bit of a character, and when he heard the band, he started jumping and dancing and singing, and Mac was a little more reserved, and he said, if Jeff's going to continue doing that, I'll have to go home. And they had a fire drill in the winter. They tied a rope around Jim, my youngest boy, and lowered him out the window. And he'd run around the house, come in the back door, and go up to go out again. And patrol cops were going past, and they saw Jimmy running without a coat or anything, so they came in to tell us what was going on. Well, we weren't quite aware that he was going in and out quite so much, so we called them, and they said they were having a fire drill and let him Jimmy out. That's enough, isn't it?
What about cameras?
Cameras,
Did you have those?
yeah, I broke, don't put this down, but I broke my camera about 6 months ago. Yeah, we had cameras,
And
little
they were
brownie cameras,
What?
brownie cameras,
What were those?
just little tiny square ones.
What kind of music did they have?
Glenn Miller, Colby Carmichael,
Did you have like
Tommy Dorsey.
Did you have like dances or anything?
Oh, sure.
Like what were those?
You could go up to the Royal Motel every Saturday night. We didn't go every Saturday night, but they had dances. They had a band. The Brockway High School alumni dances used to be open, and they would encourage the past graduates, the alumni, to go to them. We used to go to that.
Did you play any sports when you were little? Like basketball or
Just in gym class, and that's when they wore the big blue bloomers.
What did Grandpa play football and
He played football in high school. When he was at Yale, he was Yale for a year and a half, pre-med, and he played intramural football. You said you wanted something about,
oh yeah, the history of being related to the rock?
okay. Can I give it your, no, it has to be mine. Okay, you're the 9th. Your dad is the 8th. I'm of 7th generation of the Brockway family, consider. Do you want me to say that Consider was 14 when he was in the Revolutionary War? 14 or 15 in the Revolutionary War. He had a son, Chauncey Sr., and then Chauncey had Chauncey Jr. and Nicholas. Nicholas was my great-great-grandfather. He was in lumber. Myra Brockway McGovern was his daughter, and Arthur McGovern, my granddad, and Thornton, my father. James and Alonzo were brothers of Chauncey Jr., and they were really the ones that settled Brockway, and later they moved to the state of Indiana. Olive Brockway Moorhead married one of the founders of the Moorhead Methodist Church. There's a window that has up there to the going in that has her name and her husband's name on it. Nicholas was quite a horseman.
That's all I wrote down. That's it. What about the general store?
That was my granddad Batlin, so.
You know that.
Yeah, you
And what about your grandparents?
Arthur and Mary. Is that who you mean? Okay. They lived on 12th Avenue, and friends of yours, Ryan, live there now.
Aldridge's.
What?
Aldridge's. Aldridge's?
No, that's my parents. You played with their boy, Hughes. Okay, that's where Arthur and Mary McGovern lived, and Hughes lived there now. Arthur was manager of the Hemphill Miller store. I can't think of anything else. Doesn't sound very interesting.
Let's see, is there anything I could ask Grandpa?
Yeah.
I don't know what to ask.
He can fill you in on some things. Take the little gizmo.
I'll stop it for now. Okay, the first question is, tell me about the war that you went to fight in, that Korean War, and World War II.
What do you want to know about?
Just like what you did there.
Well, in World War II, I went to basic training camp Pickett, Virginia, in the medical corps, and I was there for 3 months. And then the government transferred me back to school, and they sent me first to VPI, Virginia Polytech. I was only there for about 4 days, and then they sent me to Yale University, and I went there for 2 semesters, and then they shipped me on to medical school at the University of Pittsburgh. And I was there till I graduated, and the war was over, and they turned us out of there, turned us loose. And I went and I interned and came to Brockway to practice. And then, after I practiced here for about, 2 years, then I was called to the Korean War, and after they passed the Dr. Graff law, I volunteered, and I was gone. I was sent to West Point, to the academy, Stewart Field, West Point. And I was permanently stationed there for about 7.5 months before I came home. But in the interim there, they sent me to flight surgeon school in San Antonio, Texas. And I graduated from there and in December and came back to Stewart Field. And then the following February, which would be 1953, because they petitioned for my return to Brockway due to shortage of physicians, they sent me home. Yeah.
And so let me think, what else? Anything else?
Nope.
How about, where did you and Grandma meet at again?
Where do we meet?
Yeah, on April Fool's Day.
Yes, we did. In the emergency room. She was working as a student nurse, and I was a senior medical student. And I was working as they called them a junior intern in Pittsburgh. Elsewhere they called them externs. You've got to remember, this is during the end of the war. And so I met her down there, and then, I don't know. Oh, because we got talking, and we both knew somebody in common from Brockway.
Do you remember who?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Delmo Paris. Delmo. He's also a physician. But he and I went to college together, and his father was the one who started Paris Manufacturing Company. And Paris Cleaners. So Paris Cleaners. No, I guess Paris Cleaners is still around too, to some degree. But August Paris, old Mr. August Paris, started that. Cleaners, Paris Cleaners. But his son and I went to college together. Well, his son was 2 years ahead of me. But your mother knew him from Brockway, of course. And I knew him. We went to college together. So, next thing you know, we were going to the show.
One thing, I don't know if it would work in when you asked me about things that happened. Penicillin came out, and in 1943,
Yeah.
you got a shot, a cc, every 4 hours, and it was $25 a shot. That might be interesting.
What was in that shot? 100,000 units, wasn't it?
I can't remember, Al. I know it was just a cc.
Yeah, but I think that was 100,000.
Say that one more time.
When I was in training at Southside Hospital in 1943, penicillin came out, and you got 1,000 units every 4 hours, and the shot was $25.
No, 25,000 units every 4 hours.
Well, you told me before
Yeah,
that.
it was 25,000 units, let's think about it.
You don't have to have the units.
No.
Forget the units.
They had to administer it every
What are you
4
laughing
hours.
at? And $25 a shot
And how often did you get it?
every 4 hours.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
Yes, it was expensive. They talk about drugs nowadays.
Why did you have to get it every 4 hours?
Because it absorbed. There was not much left, not enough to be effective in your system after 4 hours, so they had to give you more.
Oh boy, that's a lot. That's how much you made a month.
What?
Isn't that how much you make a month?
When I was my first year, I made $25 a month.
And that would only be good for 4 hours. For
Yeah,
penicillin.
for one shot.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you make? You made $25 an hour. Was that when you got room and board?
When I was a cadet
Oh, I'm sorry.
nurse.
She was in training. Yeah. But when you were a graduate nurse,
Yeah.
you only made 180.
Yep, a month.
When you were a graduate nurse.
Yeah. I got room and board though.
And what did you have to do to the people? Like,
For you two.
did you have to give them shots?
Oh, sure. Then nurses would take total care of them. They'd give them baths.
$80, you didn't get room and board. No,
When
no. I'll bet $1,000.
I'll put undecided.
Well, it was after the nurses unionized finally, they organized. You know, like the Pennsylvania Nurses Association and so on. And that's when they negotiated for new terms. Used to be they got room and board and I don't know how much a month, but it wasn't that much. And they got laundry. So after they negotiated, they said, okay, we'll pay you straight salary and then you can make whatever arrangements. So they paid them $180 a month. But then they had to pay for their meals and their laundry and what have you, which wasn't such a great deal.
When I worked at Southside, Ryan, for 3 months after I graduated, I got room and board. I did not have to pay for my room and board.
But then you didn't get $180. You got a lesser salary, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first went to work and the girls were getting $180 and they were all complaining because then they figured out they were done in.
Don't waste your time.
And what about, what did you do at Southside?
Who?
You. Like, what were some things that you did?
Well, I did everything. I did everything that an intern does.
Did you have to operate on people?
I helped the surgeons,
The assistant.
yeah. And I worked in the emergency room and I practiced in the Emergency Room Act. And I took care of patients on the floor. But, again, as I told you, that was called a junior intern. And actually, in those days, a full intern did the same thing as a first-year resident does now. I guess that's the best way I can describe it.
I was going to say something. You don't have any teeth in.
I had my teeth in then.
Poor Ryan, he comes down to the interview, and we go, oh, honey.
He understood what I said.
Yes, yes. I took him down and showed him.
Well, Pittsburgh, with 2 minutes left to play, was winning 7-6.
And they lost.
I don't know if they lost.